Thanks ever so much for coming and talking to us tonight. I mean, you two.
I thought we came to see a film.
Yeah, that's on the agenda as well.
Okay.
You've obviously been involved, both of you, with the Pythons for many, many years on many different projects. I'd like to start with you, André, just to ask how you got involved in the first place. How did you first get into this gravitational pull?
It's a very complicated long story, so I'll keep it very short. Was that I was working as a tape operator in a recording studio. One day Michael Palin came in and said he wanted to do a demo tape for a friend of his, and I said, great, okay. I saw that I was free and the other engineer was busy, so I said, yep, okay, well, I'll do that. Through a course of about a year, I was working with Mike. I was doing this tape, putting sound effects to it, music. And at the end of it, Mike said, I'm doing an album and we would like you to be involved. Could you come over? And I said, yeah, fine. I'll entertain that, see what happens. In between that, I was offered a rodeo show job, which I turned down. And then I had this, in the same week, Mike had rang up and said, oh, we're having a meeting, could you come over? I went over. Everybody was there apart from John Cleese. Doorbell rings, in comes John Cleese, and then the penny dropped about who they were. And I thought, oh, shit, I've just turned 18. And there's all these Oxbridge and Cambridge guys, and all I did was that I passed my bicycle proficiency test, and I had to meet a swimming certificate, and they want me to tell them what to do. And Mike said, look, this is what we need to record. And it was a big pile of papers about this big. And they said, well, look, we need to get all this recorded. Could you have a go at going through that fairly quickly? Let us know what you want us to do, and we'll do it. And that's kind of how the relationship started. So like all things, is I didn't want to lose face. I said, yeah, no problem, I can do this. I went ahead and did that, and the rest is history, really.
Well, this is obviously for the albums that they released, wasn't it? That was based on the
It's the first
TV
album,
shows.
yeah.
And the thing about it now, it's hard to imagine, but they were absolute gold dust for fans of the show. It was the way you got to hear the material again. It was very often not repeated at the time. You know, you just had to rely on the albums if you wanted to hear something again and again. And I think, John, you started on Matching Tie and Handkerchief, didn't you? Was that your
indeed,
first involvement in there? Yeah, which
Yep.
was another one in the albums. Can you tell us about that?
Well, very simply, when I was at university, obviously, Python was at its beginning and height, and there were no videos or anything like that, so we all used to rush out into a communal room and watch it, and then repeat the sketches to the best of our recollection the following day. And when I left university, I'd started playing with a lot of bands. I was still studying, but I was also playing with, for example, Peter Green when he left Fleetwood Mac, and Nick Drake, who's now a sort of cult figure, and various other people. And one of my friends was a guy called Ollie Housel, who actually looms large in the Python story. And I went to see him in a band called Tempest, which was run by John Heisman, at the Marquee, and Neil was there. And we got to talking, and they both said, oh, we're doing a Python track tomorrow, why don't you come down and play some saxophone? So, oh, absolutely, you know, I'd never met any of the guys, so I went down to the Workhouse Studios in South London, no longer there, and they said, well, we don't need you to play, we don't need any sax on this track, but we do need vocals and hand claps. So that was it. I wound up
Hand clap specialist.
hand clap and vocal, and I'm very ashamed to say it was a Gary Glitter spoof. But he was the biggest thing in pop music at the time.
At the time,
And
yeah.
I'd studiously avoided listening to it until recently, and somebody sent me a copy of it, and I can hear myself singing. Awful.
Was it any good? Was it any? I can't. I remember that album we did, as John said, we did at the Workhouse with the music stuff, and then the rest of it for the dialogue stuff I did in my back garden in my dad's greenhouse, which I converted into a recording studio. So I had them all coming down doing recordings in there, And I was never kind of convinced that is this the way we should be making records in a greenhouse converted to a recording studio. But that is the nature of Python. We did, everybody just threw what they had to throw into the mix, basically, throughout. Well, basically because Python are very cheap, we had to do everything ourselves. And everybody had to do their little part and more. So that's kind of how we ended up doing what we ended up doing.
Well, the adulation that surrounds Python and the longevity of the troupe tends to suggest more of a band than it does a group of comedians. And of course, they were there when comedy became the new rock and roll for a while, and there was big stadium concerts for comedians and things like that. Do you think there was was there an area that they were a frustrated band? I mean, Eric was very interested in music in particular, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, Eric was always sort of the most musical. John is the only person I've ever met in my life who detests music in every form, which was very interesting because much later we co-directed a charity show for Amnesty called The Secret Policeman's Ball. And I led a band that included Phil Collins, Sting, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, etc., 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 none of whom he'd ever heard of. And we were going through after the first night, which ran for about 8 hours, you know, and he said, well, we can cut that out, and we can cut that out. And it was all the music, you know. Eric Clapton, he can go, you know. Yeah. Sting, who needs him? And I go, no, these are big names. He said, I've never heard of them.
No, that's right. I remember when we were doing A Fish Called Wonder at the time, and we were deciding who should we get to sing the title song for it. In the end, we ended up having John Williams on guitar, but all these names, as John said, we had all these names come up. We had people like Freddie Mercury, and we had Phil Collins was a sort of near contender. And again, John said, well, what have they done then? Who are these people? You know, which is quite funny. There was another incident, actually, quite about John's musicality, which was quite interesting, was that I was messing about with a pedal steel at the time, and my friend Pete Wilshire bought me a pedal steel from Nashville, which I wanted to start learning. And I had it in the studio, it was all set up. This thing looks very beautiful with the pedals and stuff. And John went up to it and he goes, this is fascinating. He's going, jolly good, what is this? What is that? And I said, well, John, it's what you sometimes hear on country music and sometimes the odd rock and roll record, they do that. He said, it's not that bloody wailing thing, is it? And I said, yeah, that's it. Oh, I hate that. He said he walked straight away from it. So his knowledge of that side of things. He knows what, the good thing is that John knows what he likes and what he doesn't like, doesn't he? So.
He does indeed.
One of the reasons why you two have been involved with so much Python and related stuff is because they do have a loyalty to people that they've used and get on with, and they trust, I guess, and you are invited back, aren't you, as it were?
Yeah, they don't know who, well, they haven't found us out yet. We're still bluffing
We're still bluffing our way through it, yeah.
Can we talk...
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say... Well, no, please.
No, I was just going to say you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, even... You know, you see the films and you see the same names crop up all the time. You hear the music and you see the same names crop up. You know, it's not. A lot of it is obviously the main guys who are at the centre of it, but the surrounding core has stayed the same.
I think basically what John's trying to say is that they've ruined our lives.
Now, are the Pythons control freaks, or do you get a situation where you can actually bring something to the party?
Well, I mean, from my point of view, and obviously relating to Life of Brian, when we did the film, I'm quite amazed that I was actually in script meetings with them while they were thrashing it all out and deciding what to put in and what not to put in. And in fact, I've got my original notes when Eric did a demo on guitar of Bright Side of Life, and which he sent over to me, and I had to go into the meeting and tell them how we were going to do it. You know, it was very interesting. But once I got that demo, it was completely left up to me what to do with the song. He didn't, no suggestions, nothing.
No, they do know what they want. They're very clever in the sense that they'll give you the brief, they'll take you through what they want, and they'll let you get on with doing it. It was like making the records when we were doing the albums, and they would come in, they'd do their voices, and we'd jump sometimes from sketch to sketch or whatever, and then they'd buzz off. I'd finish them all off, then we'd get together, I'd change it 5 times for them for each of their comments and stuff, and then we'd always go back to the first version I originally did, as usual. And it worked out that they know what they want when they hear, and they know what they don't want when they hear it as well. So in a way, it's a good education. So you know where you stand with them, basically.
Right.
You know.
I guess you had the same sort of autonomy that Terry Gilliam did when he did the animation, because that was sort of separate from the rest of the show, you know, he could bring it in. Let's talk about Life of Brian in particular. What are your memories of working on it?
Well, my personal one was also, being in the script meetings, and I insist that one of the gags in the film is mine. Because I'm pretty certain, and I know things change with time, you know, but I'm pretty certain the original script had the scene with the leper, and it was spare some coppers for a leper. And I said, because I was thinking of the parrot sketch, well, surely he's an ex-leper. And that went in because Michael said, oh, I like that, and they wrote it down, and that went in the film. So that's my big contribution. The minor contribution is the song at the end, which was a throwaway, and it literally, they didn't have an ending for the film. There were, you know, he was going to get off the cross, he was going to be, all kinds, he was going to be rescued, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And Eric sent me, as I say, a cassette of the song in very rough form, and apparently none of the others were impressed at all with it. I rang Terry Jones at the time and said, how much do you need of the song for the end? He said, about 20 seconds. So I called Eric back and said he wants 20 seconds. I won't tell you what he said. But we did the whole song, you know, and it was one morning at Chapel Studios. We did the orchestra all in one. And then the Fred Tomlinson singers, who, of course, were in the Lumberjack sketch, and myself did the whistling. So I'm immortalised in that way in the film as well. Yeah,
it's a song that's has a life outside of Python as well. It's at football matches, rugby matches, you know, everywhere.
Funerals.
Yeah, funerals, yeah, everywhere. I also wanted to ask you about the opening number, the title song, which is like it seems to me like a Bond.
It is, yeah.
Parody.
It was. Terry Gilliam came to me and Dave Howman, my co-writer, and he said we want a sort of a James Bondy type theme. And of course, doing parodies of Bond is quite easy because you only have the 2 notes. There's the bam, bam, and you put that in on anything, you know, you've got James Bond. So we knocked something up. It took literally about 10 minutes to write that. We did a demo. It was great. We enjoyed it. We were working with a girl singer called Sonia Jones. She was Welsh, and she was 17, and we wanted a sort of Shirley Bassey type voice, so we thought, well, who can we get to sing this? And we thought, well, Sonia's Welsh. She's got to sound like Shirley Bassey, hasn't she? So we got Sonia involved to sing it. She came in, she did that, which was great. Then we decided, Terry liked it, which was terrific. Then we mastered it at Abbey Road. We had an orchestra, blah, blah, blah. But it was never quite as good as the demo. So in the end, the version that you hear in the film is the demo that we knocked up on an 8-track, which took 10 minutes to write. And one verse is missing because Terry wanted to take a whole verse out. And I said to Terry, well, look, if you want to take this verse out, we should really copy this 1-inch tape we had, because if I cut this and it gets ruined, we've lost it. He said, no, Andre. He said, I trust you 120%. Just hack it away. So we hacked the tape away. We joined it together. It worked. Thankfully, it worked all right. So basically, we have a version with 1 verse missing, and it's a demo, and it's in the film. So that's quite quite weird that knowing that there's a nice version. But he was absolutely again, you know, you were saying about they knew what they wanted, and he was quite right. The demo is better than the polished clinical version that we recorded at Abbey Road. I mean, it's extraordinary, really, that a demo ends up on a feature film like that.
I never did a 20-second version, which I think Eric killed that fairly quickly. I think once we recorded it, and it was my suggestion to make it a sort of a 1930s Hollywood musical sequence, everyone got on board with that, and it sort of took off or took a life of its own. Although I know John was complaining about being up on the cross. It's sort of, oh, how long am I going to be stuck up here? And but I gather from earlier he was complaining on Holy Grail as well. So I think that's probably something that he does. But we always recorded it as a full-length track. The original recording was mixed by George Harrison, who I sort of thought people aren't just going to want to hear the same thing over and over again. So I wrote the sort of counter melody in the strings, and he went potty for this, and he said, "I'm taking the whistle out and I'm putting that in," you know. And so when you actually hear it that's what happens, you know. And he used to greet me thereafter by singing that phrase rather than saying hello, you know, which was quite sweet. Yeah. But I just think as soon as Eric found the voice for it, and they started filming, they realised that they had the ending, and that was how the film should end. But at the time, as I say, of writing, I don't think the other Pythons were particularly impressed with it at all as an idea. It was just, we've got to end it somehow. Let's see what we can do.
Brilliant. Music has been an important part of Python all the way through it, from the TV series, the records and the films, and these two guys are very responsible for that. Please thank our two wonderful guests.
Thank you.